When we look at the 2010s and the playoff history in those years, one team that I think will certainly be forgotten in that is, of course, the 2012-2013 Memphis Grizzlies. If we remember, this team went 56-26 and lost in the conference finals to the San Antonio Spurs in a sweep. But this team was a very grindhouse team. They've beaten some very impressive teams. I believe they beat the Clippers that year. And we all know how fun those Clippers Memphis Grizzlies series were, if you remember the 2010s watching the playoffs. It was just a very fun atmosphere, and we know that the Memphis Grizzlies had guys like Mike Conley, Marc Gasol, and Zach Randolph at the time, really beasting and feasting in that. And it was the reason why it was dubbed the Grindhouse, the Memphis Grizzlies arena. And it was just a fun team to watch, although they weren't exciting with no 3-point shots and no flashy dunkers. They just had guys that were willing to put in the work, and that's the type of team that I love to watch, because I think those teams get very disrespected in terms of how we view them, because they're boring, they don't really bring excitement to anybody because they're not flashy enough, but they do the right things that get a lot of people, especially basketball aficionados, get excited, because it just shows you that type of basketball can still be viable in the 2010s. Although we haven't really seen it since those Memphis Grizzlies, it was still there. But now it looks like, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, that the two key players, now that Zach Randolph is not on the team anymore, Marc Gasol and Mike Conley, are going to be listed as being put on the trade block. And of course, Memphis is now listing to offers for him. And this is what the article goes on to say from Adrian Wojnarowski. Memphis ownership and management have decided they have reached an organizational crossroad and are preparing to weigh a deal on scenarios of one or more of their cornerstone pieces between now and February 7th, of course, the trade deadline. The reason why they're doing this is because now they realize that Jaren Jackson is going to be the centerpiece that they want to build around. And it makes sense, right? Because Marc Gasol is around 34 years old and Mike Conley is 31. And it's kind of crazy to think that they've been around the league for that long, but that just goes to show you how much time flies. And if I'm the Memphis Grizzlies, I feel that I'm going to get most value out of Mike Conley. Even though he has the biggest contract out of the two, I still think that being 31 years old, you still have a couple of years left on the tires, on the NBA tires, the metaphorical tires, to really do something in this league. Because to me, the only team that I think would be interested in Marc Gasol would, of course, be the Charlotte Hornets. I don't think that it's going to be any other team that's going to be interested in Marc Gasol. It's a very short list of teams that will be willing to want him. When I look at all the NBA teams, I just don't think he's going to fit in anywhere. But the teams that the player that I really want to focus on is, of course, one of the most underrated point guards, I feel like, in the 2010s and just in my generation of basketball's history, and that's, of course, Mike Conley. When we look at his stats, he's more of a 15 and 5 assist guy. When you look at those numbers, that's not really that impressive. But when you really look at it throughout a couple of years of being injured, and just especially last year, the 2017-2018 year, we only played 12 games, it sucks to see that when you look at his history, he once averaged 20 points per game. And you would think that if you would have told me that Mike Conley averaged 20 points per game, I would have not believed you, because I think that Mike Conley is good, but I don't think he's that good to average 20 points per game. But he's shown you throughout a couple of years he's averaged 20 points, 15 points, 17 points, 14 points. He's a very solid player, and it sucks to see that his place in history will go very underrated, even though he won a 2012-2013 All-Defensive Player. It just sucks that he never got an all-star vote. He never got into a all-NBA team, either 1 or 2 or 3. And I just think that, like I said, he's going to be one of the most underrated point guards in my generation of basketball. That is, of course, I'm talking about the early 2000s and on. Because I think that when I watch him play, he's obviously not the flashiest passer. He's not the sharpest shooter. He's not the, flashiest dunker. But he just does the right things at the right time. And though the percentages will say differently, he's a 44% field goal percentage, 37 from 3, 81% from the free throw line, and efficiency field goal of 49, about 50%. That's not very good. But I still think that Mike Conley is a great leader. He's a guy he's a great locker room guy. And of course, I've heard that from guys such as Jared Dudley have called him that. I think that Mike Conley will definitely get picked up. And it's going to be a matter of what teams will pick him up. And in my list that I have here, I have 4 teams that will be very interested in Mike Conley if they do it right. The first team, in my opinion, that should go after him is the Utah Jazz. And I know a lot of guys, especially in Utah, are going to be kind of confused and baffled as to why I said the Utah Jazz. But I want you guys to hear me out on this. I think that Utah Jazz have a serious problem as they don't have another go-to scorer on the team. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles do their thing, but it would be nice to have a guy that averages around 15 points per game, but can also dish the rock and kind of ease the pressure of Donovan Mitchell carrying up the rock and just having him score and do the offense. I think Mike Conley could do that, especially this season, averaging 19 points per game with 6.1 assists. I think that Mike Conley could do a very good and even better job than Ricky Rubio can. The problem with Ricky Rubio, in my opinion, is that he's so inconsistent, especially with his jumper, that you don't know which Ricky Rubio you're going to get. Are you going to get the Ricky Rubio that helps you win games, or are you going to get the Ricky Rubio that hinders you in games? And I think if you're able to trade him and maybe a couple pieces, and also with the fact that Dante Exum isn't ready, even though you signed him to a new contract, he's just not ready to play. I still think that Mike Conley in Utah could be a very good fit. And if I'm the Utah Jazz, I am looking out for Mike Conley, because even though he has a big contract, I still think that having a guy in Mike Conley on your team could be a very big addition there. And it's just going to be a question of what are you going to get rid of to get him. That I don't know, but I think that if I'm the Utah Jazz, I'm definitely looking at Mike Conley as an option to replace Ricky Rubio. Even though, you know, the Utah fans love Ricky Rubio, I still think that he's going to be a better fit somewhere else. And I think that Mike Conley will be the best fit in my list of who I think should go and get Mike Conley. The next team I have on my list is, of course, the Phoenix Suns. And this is just because the Phoenix Suns have always been wanting a point guard. But in my opinion, like I've talked about in numerous videos, just make Devin Booker the point guard and get another scorer on your team. I don't think it's that hard or that confusing. I think if you were able to get a guy to help Devin Booker with the scoring, then I think you'll offset some of the load that he will have at point guard, because he averages a very good amount of assists, almost I think near identical to to Mike Conley, that is. Why not do something about it? But we're not here to talk about Devin Booker. The Phoenix Suns are second on my list just because they've always had that stigma of they always need a point guard, and they've always drafted very poorly in that position. The next team that should go after Mike Conley is, of course, the Detroit Pistons. Dwayne Casey is now there, and he's brought in there to help this team because Stan Van Gundy couldn't do the job. But right now, I just feel that the Detroit Pistons are kind of just stuck in this mediocre area, and it's going to be a question of what are they going to do to get upgrade in positions. Obviously, they have Reggie Jackson, who was a backup to Russell Westbrook, and it just has not panned out. And I think that if this team is trying to make a push or trying to do something in the playoffs or try to get into that playoff position, then I think you add Mike Conley along with Blake Griffin, along with Andre Drummond, and he could potentially help you win now if that's the goal of Dwayne Casey, is just to get into the playoffs to prove to Toronto that they made a mistake in releasing him and not giving him the proper credit and respect that he deserved. That's a team that I think could potentially get him, but I'm still not convinced that the Detroit Pistons have enough pieces to warrant a trade for Mike Conley. The next team I think is going to be the most interesting team, and that's, of course, the Dallas Mavericks. I know what you guys are thinking. We all know that the trade rumors are out there for Dennis Smith Jr. We know that management and Rick Carlisle are not getting along with him. So I think because of that situation, I say you find a way to get the cap room to get a Mike Conley. I think that Mike Conley could really do something special with Luka Doncic and even DeAndre Jordan. I think that Mike Conley could be a perfect number 2 or number 3 player to a Luka Doncic. And I think that if the Dallas Mavericks are trying to get to that playoff push, you know, for Dirk's last ride, why not bring in a guy like Mike Conley who will slow the pace down, get everybody set up, and potentially really flourish and really show out a guy in Luka Doncic and flourish his skills, because I feel that Mike Conley is a very complimentary player, and if he's able to complement Luka Doncic so well, because we know that Dennis Smith Jr. is a guy that needs the ball in his hand, but Mike Conley doesn't need the ball in his hand to be an effective player. I think that Mike Conley could do a perfect job of assisting Luka Doncic or getting the buckets from Luka Doncic, and it would just be an awesome fit for the Dallas Mavericks to try and get a guy who will really not cause any drama, won't cause any type of situation, because he knows his role. And when you know your role, that means that people are going to excel at that role tremendously. And especially with a guy like Rick Carlisle as head coach and Luka Doncic as a young, promising, talented player, I think that Mike Conley could be the perfect fit in Dallas. And now that we're reached the end of this video, I want to ask you guys, what do you guys think of the fit for Mike Conley? What team would be the perfect fit for a guy in Conley to fit on? Would it be, like I said, the Utah Jazz is the one that I picked, the Dallas Mavericks, the Detroit Pistons, or the Phoenix Suns, or even another team that we haven't mentioned? I would love to know your guys' opinion in the comments down below of what team Mike Conley could be on. And also I want to know what you guys think of Mike Conley's career and what you think of him as a player overall. Do you feel that he's underrated, overrated, or just slightly rated at where he's at? That means that, you know what, he's rated, he is where he is. He's not really rated or overrated or underrated. I would love to know your guys' opinion on that piece that I just said earlier in the video. But anyway, guys, this has been your boy Bernie here on The Charge, giving the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. And guys, if you haven't subscribed to the videos, or the channel I should say, what are you guys doing? Hit that subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell to make sure you don't miss our NBA content. And I think I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.